rivers, lakes, and fields. Outdoor ramblings, rambling about the outdoors with Milton and O'Neill. Rambling about the outdoors with Milton and O'Neill.
Proceed. I'm sorry, I jumped right in there, didn't I?
Well, that's okay, O'Neill. You've been known to jump right in there a lot of times.
I have indeed.
Come out wet. Hello, folks. This is Milton Crabapple, and I'm here with my jumping in co-host, O'Neill Williams. Welcome to another episode of Outdoor Ramblings, where O'Neill and me just like to get together and talk about what we've been doing, where we've been going, and what we've been catching or shooting. Ain't that right, O'Neill?
That's fact. And if we tell a lie or two, you'll just have to just let it go.
Well, it ain't a lie if they can't prove it.
Well, that's true too. Well, I know. I was trying to think of what what people are going to first thing they see when the first time they watch this. They're going to look at you and ask, "What is Milton pointing at?" He's pointing his finger up into the sky. What are you pointing at?
I'm trying to get a lightning bolt to strike. I ain't had no luck yet, though.
Good.
I wish you'd have been with me yesterday afternoon, O'Neill.
What were you doing?
You'd have just had a fit. Well, I told you I got this bluegill pond with a feeder on there where I take my grandkids and all. I put them pellets in there, and it squirts them out about twice a day, and them bluegill just get big old titty brim,
Yeah.
Anyhow, I was over there, and fella that owns the place is out of town. He asked me he's out of town for 2 weeks. He said, would I mind just dropping by and checking on the place? So I dropped by there, and of course I threw in my spinning rod, and my tackle box, and I went over there, and battery was dead on my feeder, so I had to take it up and plug it in up at his garage. And I said, well, I might as well fish a little while I'm here. So I had a little old pumpkin seed worm about 5 inches long on there, and I had a hook, had a little worm hook, but it was a small hook. But anyhow, I just had it on there with no weight or nothing. I said, well, this looks as good as anything. So I walked down there, and I don't know if them bass was on the pre-spawn or what, but I'm going to ask you about this in a minute. But the first 5 casts I made, I got 5 of them. I didn't get them all in, but they was all small bass. They was all 12 inches, 10, 12 inches long. The kind you ought to take out of a pond and eat them.
Yeah, yearlings.
You don't need to throw that size back in there.
No.
But anyhow, I saw one over there. There's an old blowdown over there, and I said, I don't know if I can even reach that thing with this light line. I had 6-pound test line over there. But I saw a bass laying over there at the end of that old blowdown. He was just laying there, weren't moving, laying up kind of near the top of the water. Water wasn't but about 4 or 5 feet deep. And I said, that looks like one over there bigger than these I've been catching. So I hauled off, and I flung that worm as hard as I could, and it landed about a foot on the other side of him. I didn't have no weight or nothing. So it laid there for a second, and I twitched it, and I saw his mouth just grabbed that. He whirled around and grabbed that thing, and I latched into him, and I said, well, this is better than them little ones I've been catching. And he tore out across that pond, and I said, this is a pretty good fish. And you know how they do. You get them on there, and they'll go make one good jump. He come out of the water, and I said, now, boy, he's a nice one now.
Scared you, didn't he?
He scared me, yes, sir, because I had 6-pound line on there, and according to my calculations over the last 4 years, I've caught about 200 fish on it without changing hooks.
Oh my goodness.
So I didn't figure I was going to get him in, but I got him in and lifted him up. Best of my calculations, she weighed about 6 pounds.
Wow.
And was just full of eggs, just stomach, just hanging down on that thing.
Yeah.
Probably wouldn't have weighed but 4 pounds if it wasn't for all them eggs. But I got it in. I made a selfie picture. Well,
let's see it
now. But anyhow, I tell you what I'll do. There ain't nobody looking, are they?
No.
Well, I'll just see if I can't just show you a picture of that fish.
Oh my goodness.
That was a nice
Milton,
fish.
that one's carrying some eggs now, I'm telling you.
For y'all that are just listening, I just showed him a picture of that to prove that I caught it. But here's my question, O'Neill,
Go.
and I want you to elaborate on this now.
You cut me loose.
I believe
Uh-huh.
that especially in small ponds, when folks go bass fishing, I don't care what time of year it is, they're nearly always using too heavy a line, too big of a hook, and too big of a bait.
Yes, yes, and yes. May I go? Ready?
Yes,
Listen
sir.
to this now, everybody.
I'm just setting it up for you.
Yes, you are indeed. Let me look. If you had to pick one set of gear to bass fish the rest of your life, you'll catch more bass, large and small, by using 6 or 8 pound test line, almost no weight or no weight at all, and use a plastic worm or a plastic lizard. If that's the only thing you had to use the rest of your life and you stuck with that, you would catch more bass. There's no category of baits whereby you can fish shallow, deep, fast, slow, and change colors than you can with a plastic worm.
That's true. And you talk about 6 pound line. Now, a lot of people say, well, 6 pound line, you know, I'm used to using 17 pound test line when I fish. I'm telling you, you get some good 6 pound test line on a rod, and it's hard to break that stuff.
Well, absolutely. Well, the thing is, what the 6 pound line will catch more fish for you because you feel the bite better with a light line. The only people that can get away with using really heavy line, 20, 25, even 30 pound test line, and that can feel the bite are the professional fishermen, people that fish the Bassmaster Tournament Trail. They can feel the bite. Somebody like me, I'll catch way more fish using 6 pound. I'll tell you, I was in a tournament many years ago when I used to tournament bass fish. I was at Lake Lanier, which was my home lake, clear water, spotted bass. You got to get that combination. And I drew this was years ago when we used to draw partners and you didn't know who you were going to fish with until that morning. And I drew a guy and he fished, his home lake was Clark's Hill. Largemouth bass, stained water. We were in clear water fishing for spots. Okay. You got this picture?
Yes, sir.
I caught 51 that day and he caught 1 because of the different combination. He used an 8 or a 9-inch worm. I used a 4-inch worm with 6 pound test line, and he used 17 pound test line and an 8-inch worm. And I caught 51 and he caught 1, and the knuckle in the head never would change.
You know, I'll bet you I know what he was thinking. He said, in a minute, I'm going to catch a world record.
Well, you know, everybody goes for the big fish. But as far as I'm concerned, you know, especially with little kids and things like that you take to the pond, you don't have to catch 6 pounders like you did. Just catch some.
No. Just catch some. And I'll tell you,
what's that old saying? And I'll shut up. But that old saying, to a child, the best that picture he's ever seen is the hole in the water where the float used to be.
That's true.
Yeah.
And the worst sight to his daddy is the circles that float was making around a tree limb about 30 feet up.
Well, that's true too.
Before it stopped wrapping up.
That's right. I remember I took Travis fishing one day, and we were in the boat together, and he was just casting like mad. He was about 6 years old. And he hooked me in the chin. I mean, all the way up past the barb. And so we cut it off, and then I dug it out later. But
did he try to put you on the stringer?
Yeah, it felt like it there for a minute. Yeah, sure enough.
Did you take out drag?
Yeah. Well, I got one more tip about that 6 pound test line. Ready?
Yes, sir.
Every time you go fishing, if you were going to use 6 or even 8, every time you go fishing, the first thing you do is to take off 1 rod length of line. That freshens the last 6 or 8 feet of line. Because you believe me, you don't remember the last time you went what your line had to endure before you quit that day. So the first thing you do is 6 feet of line, a fresh knot, and not like you put on a fresh hook too.
Well, that's good advice. You know, I'll just admit I'm too lazy to do that.
Well, you have to be reminded to do things like that.
I'm not a fast line hook tire like a lot of these folks are.
Uh-huh.
I just about got to have some kind of jig to help me twist that thing and tie it. You know, my eyes ain't what they used to be.
Well, I'm not a bit surprised.
But I got another question now about farm
ponds. You got another
ponds.
story?
You know, I like to fish farm ponds.
Oh, me too.
Fish over at Old Man Eacher's farm pond. Been fishing there for years, you know. And in the summertime, now when it gets hot out in them big reservoirs and all, and it gets blazing hot, you've said this a lot of times before, that if you're going around fishing the shoreline, most of the fish are where?
They're behind you.
They're behind you, that's right. But now that ain't always the case in a farm pond. And when
you got them cornered.
When it gets hot and all that, plus there ain't no oxygen much out in the deep water out there.
Yes.
And them fish are, you know, they're struggling out there sometimes. But that around the edge of the water seems to always work in a farm pond.
That is true. That's where the vegetation is. The vegetation's not out there in the deep water.
But I like fishing them farm ponds, you know.
Oh, boy.
You can get one of them memorized, and you know that there ain't no use going down that bank. But you go down this bank, you just about know where you're going to catch a good fish.
Oh, absolutely. That bass that you caught, was it as big as that fish right back there? See him?
No, sir. You're talking about that permit or that rooster fish?
That rooster fish. Now,
no, that ain't a permit, is it? Is that a
no?
jack?
That's a jack.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. But that rooster fish, that's some, you know, I've been fortunate over the years to go to some mighty fine places. Not that I'm any better than anybody else, but I have gotten to go to some really good places to go fishing.
How big was that rooster fish?
It was about 75 pounds.
I don't know how you'd ever get one of them. They're the same thing just about as a jack. All them jacks will snatch your wrist off if you ain't careful.
Absolutely. Those fish like that with those tails, the tuna and a permit and a jack crevalle and all those with a fish with a tail like that, they are strong. Yes, indeed. They are strong and fast. And it's funny, I caught that rooster fish in Costa Rica, and it's the first one I ever caught. And he weighed 75 pounds.
How long did it take you to get him in?
40 minutes. I remember that because it was quite an event.
Beach all lives. I don't know how you could do it.
It's 40 minutes. Well, it was on the television show, so I couldn't quit.
Have you ever been ice fishing?
I did that once, and that was enough. How about you?
I did it once a couple of years ago. You know, it got cold. Me and dude fish all year round. And I said I sure would love to go fishing. It was cold. It'd been down in the teens for about 2 weeks at night. I said, I sure would love to go fishing. He said, let's go. I said, well, we can't. The lake's froze over out there. He said, up north, everything freezes up every year. That don't stop them folks from fishing. He said, they just go chop a hole in the ice and fish.
Right.
He said, we ought to try that ice fishing because it don't freeze up down here often. I said, well, that's a good point. I said, we'll give it a try. So we went ice fishing at Old Man Eacher's pond. I'm telling you, anybody that's listening that ain't never tried ice fishing, my recommendation is don't.
That's right. Just put it off. You'll be all right.
Way too much work for me.
I'll tell you what, those people, those guys up north, I know I fished a lake. Can't remember the name of it. It was up there in Minnesota. I fished a lake that was famous for ice fishing. Okay. And those guys, sometimes they would be the guide told me, he said sometimes there would be over 2,000 people in tents on that lake ice fishing on a weekend.
Beats all I ever seen. But it ain't going to be me. I'll just tell you, I ain't going to do it again. I figure it took us might near 2 hours just to get a hole chopped out in the lake big enough to put the boat in. By the time we got started fishing, I was wore out, O'Neill.
Oh, God.
We fished for about 30 minutes. We didn't get a bite, and dude said, let's move to another spot. I said, no, sir. I'm out of here. I ain't doing that ice fishing anymore.
I don't know if I can do this or not.
Ice fish?
Yeah, ice fish. Yeah, I can't do that.
But I've watched them drag some big ones out. Well, so what you got coming up? Anytime, some trips or any adventures? You written any new books or anything?
Oh man, well, there's always a book in my hand, or actually the Kindle. Everything in a book's printed too small these days.
But what about your books I'm talking about?
Well, yeah, it's still selling, and I still will. Quite frankly, it's O'Neill Outside, 65 years in the outdoors, and it's things like you and I are talking about.
Well, how can I get one? How can folks get one of them?
Well, you can best place to get them is just to go to Amazon, and there it is, O'Neill Outside.
O'Neill. There ain't too many O'Neill Williams out there. Are
No.
they write books?
No, I don't know of a single other one. But I did.
There it is on the screen right there.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, O'Neill Books. But I went to, when Gail was ill, this was 30-something years ago. And in my lifetime, I have never met anybody named O'Neill Williams. So I'm taking Gail to the doctor. And I was taking her to the doctor, and we go into the Emory Hospital, and there's a desk there at the entryway into the doctor's offices and all that kind of stuff. And there's a little a name plate, and it says O'Neill Williams. And of course, I'm looking around. Somebody's playing a joke here, and I asked the lady. I said, is this true? Is there a guy named O'Neill Williams here? She said, oh, yeah, I'll go get him for you. And out walked about a 6'4" black guy named O'Neill Williams. And we took the necessary photos, and it was fun. And he has never met anybody named O'Neill Williams either.
Well, you know what? You might not believe this, O'Neill, but I've never met anybody named Milton Crabapple either.
I'll bet not.
No, sure.
I'll bet that would be a pretty good guess.
It would be, you tell you. So y'all thought for a minute y'all might be brothers?
It was close. We discussed it.
Yeah. We was out at a restaurant at a hotel a while back on the trip we was on, and I was sitting in there and went in to get me a little branch water there in the little bar area, and this fellow was sitting over there, and he got a phone call. I was watching him, and he just laid the phone down and just started boo-hooing. And I went over there to him. I said, what's wrong, fella? He said, well, I just found out I've got a half brother. And I said, really? I said, well, different father? He said, no, shark attack. Okay,
you can meet some strange people.
You can meet some strange folks in those places.
That's right. You got a knack for that.
Yes, sir.
You really do.
Well, you got any fishing trips coming up?
Yeah, I do have some, with this extended light now, of course, with the change in hours, even though the lake temperature hadn't risen a great deal, the game fish, whether it's brim or bass or whatever, they do react to that lengthened daylight, and they do get more active and so forth. So yeah, I'm going to go fishing in the next couple of weeks. I've got a trip or two planned, and otherwise, and that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to fish in Florida some this year too.
Good. I can't focus on fishing right now until squirrel season's over with.
Well, you've got, now that goes, to the end of March?
No, it goes till tomorrow.
Oh,
Because the end of February here in Georgia, February
oh,
28th, but we got an extra day this year, so I'm going to get in one more trip. But
one more day, huh?
I sit there all through deer season, and I don't hunt out in a big field. I hunt pretty much. I'm sitting in the woods,
Yeah.
and them squirrels are coming out. And I'm telling you something. I sit there all through deer season, just counting the days till deer season's over with, where I can get after them squirrels. I like to hunt those things just as much as I did when I see one of them coming through the trees. It's just like it was when I was 10 years old with a little old single shot 22. You remember them 22 rifles that the single shot, you put it in there, but then you had to pull a bolt back on it to cock it. You remember them?
I do indeed.
Pull that bolt back on that thing. That's what I learned to shoot with. Was that?
I'll be fair with you. It would be hard to believe, knowing about the television show all this time and all. I quite frankly, I would prefer to hunt squirrels than white-tailed deer.
Well, I would too, except you don't get as much meat off of a squirrel.
Well, and people don't pay you. Advertisers don't pay you to promote squirrel hunting like they do deer hunting.
That's true. That's true. But you flip around there, some of them outdoor shows, you're going to find some squirrel hunts on there now.
Yeah, that's right.
They're doing some squirrel hunt. A lot of people like to hunt them with dogs,
Oh, I've done that one time in Tennessee, and those were, I enjoyed that. I enjoyed watching the dogs work.
Yeah, and some take a baseball bat. Somebody in the crowd will have a squirrel goes in a hole. They'll start beating on the side of that tree, and sometimes that squirrel will come out of there like a cannon. He can't take that beating when he's in there. He's got to come out of there. You ever twist?
My only trouble up where we live up here in the mountains, the squirrel hunting, is because you move around constantly and slowly. But up here in the mountains, when you stop and get out of the truck, it's uphill. And then it's uphill to go back to the truck. I don't understand that.
I don't understand that either. Up where we hunt a lot, there's two directions you can go, uphill and downhill.
Yeah.
And it helps a lot if you got one leg longer than the other leg if you want to go sideways.
Sure.
Because you're walking.
Yeah, I know a few people like that.
I know a few of them too. Yes, sir. But anyhow, I like that squirrel hunting, and then so we start that as soon as deer season's over. So really, all of February and most of is squirrel hunting season for me. And I like to put probably about 10 or 12 of them in the freezer.
You bet.
All year long, and now it'll open up again here in Georgia, August 15th. Is when it generally opens, but I don't like to go then because it's too darn hot. And you get out there and you
have to move around squirrel hunting.
Well, but you moving around's fun too, but it's still hot. And the mosquitoes getting after you and chiggers and all kinds of stuff. And then a lot of times you kill a squirrel and you got wolves on him. So most people don't like to eat them if they got wolves on them. And that's that bot fly, and that larva gets under the skin. It makes a big old knot. Looks like it's half as big as your thumb on him. And that's that.
I've got a, let's see, somewhere in the room, I've got I won't go get it now. Right up there, I've got a squirrel mounted.
Do you have a wolf on him?
No, but he's holding a fishing float.
Well, good. Yeah. Well, after the first good frost, them larvae emerge and come out of there, and then he'll heal up. And of course, that in your skin, actually, it don't hurt him hurt you to eat the meat, even if he had a wolf on him. But it ain't too appetizing to clean one to think about eating him when he's got that big old larvae growing in.
I wanted to ask you about something you said earlier about the catching those 10 and 11-inch bass in these ponds. You need to keep those fish.
You do, yes, sir. You can ask a biologist about it. He'll say you either keep them and eat them or throw them over the dam and let the coyotes have them.
Right.
Because the lake just gets overcrowded and then they get stunted.
Well, there's not enough food in there for all of them.
And that's true. So they don't grow. Fish are funny. You can put a goldfish in a little fish bowl and keep him for 10 years and he'll still just be that long. But if you go buy him and put him in the lake, in a few years he'll weigh 3 or 4 pounds.
Yeah.
Because they grow according to
How
the
much food do they
environment.
have?
But I was fishing with a fella. We was doing a job at C&S, it's Crabapple and Spencer, C&S Crappie Removal Service. You know,
Okay.
that's another business I have, you know, where
I
folks
understand.
got a lot of crappie in the lake and they want more bass. So we go out there and we try to remove a lot of them crappie for them, you know. And we
Well,
was
that's one of the things that people make a mistake when they're if they own a pond, okay, they own a lake on their property, all right, and they put bass in it, and they put brim in it, and they put crappie in it. Now that's a mistake.
That's a mistake.
That's a mistake. Crappie don't belong in that pond because they eat everything.
You can put crappie, you can put bass and brim and catfish in there.
Yes.
I think. But, you know, just to show you how people think about this now.
All right.
I'm going to have to go here in a little while. I got work to do, O'Neill. I ain't got all day to sit around.
Yeah, I already got two. I got 2 calls on my phone right there. I got to return. Yeah.
But me and a fellow we was doing a crappie removal job for this fella
Okay.
in his farm pond. He had about a 2 or 3 acre pond, I guess.
Uh-huh.
And he told us we could go up there, and he said, the rule was, he said, now he thought he knew a lot about pond, man. He said, the rule is if you catch crappie, you can't throw it back in. I said, don't worry, we'll get rid of them crappie.
Right.
And but anyhow, he said, if you catch bass, he said, there's a lot of bass in there. And he said, and I couldn't believe he said this, it made me chuckle. He said, I don't mind you taking the big ones out of there, but leave the little ones.
Ooh. Ooh.
And I thought, he don't know a god darn thing about managing a pond.
Nope. That's
It's
just
exactly
the opposite of what he should be doing.
But them big females, them great old big ones are females always. And you leave them in there and take all them little ones out of there and eat them. But, you know, some people just, especially these neighborhoods, have ponds in their subdivisions, and they always got a rule, catch and release.
Yeah.
Catch and release only. And I'm thinking, well, pretty soon there ain't going to be nothing to catch but 8-inch long bass and little old brim about the size of a playing card.
That's it.
You know? And that's all they're going to have, because it's a population like that is just like your lawn. It's like, no mowing on this lawn.
Mm-hmm.
They think it's going to look good forever. No mowing. We don't want to kill the grass.
Nope.
You know, and what happens if you don't mow it? You end up with a bunch of weeds out there sooner or later.
Well, look at here. Milton, I got to go.
Well, I got to go too, O'Neill. It sure has been fun talking with you. We'll get together again.
I hope so. I really enjoy talking, and it allows me to mention things like the size of the line and the plastic worms and things like that, because there's plenty of fish to be caught, but people make mistakes and it keeps them from catching them.
Yeah, plenty of them to be fried.
So I can't wait to see you again soon.
Plenty of them to be fried too.
There you go.
Well, anyhow, I enjoyed it, folks. I hope you enjoyed listening to me and O'Neill. We've been friends for many, many years, and we like to get together and ramble about the outdoors. So till next time, I'm Milton Crabapple, and he's O'Neill Williams, and we'll see y'all later.
You betcha.
Outdoor ramblings, rambling around the woodlands, the rivers, lakes, and fields. Outdoor ramblings, rambling about the outdoors with Milton and O'Neill. Rambling about the outdoors with Milton and O'Neill.